Let me ask you a question, kid. Did you see that movie, Night of the Living Dead? Bert, Frank, we have a little problem.
Huh?
Oh, where'd we go?
Oh no.
What the fuck happened? All right, technical difficulties. You can't see us right now. Son of a bitch. All right, let me get this. I think I know. What was doing it. What's crazy is like it worked before I did all this. This is what happens when you're live, folks.
We're here, we promise.
Wow. Fuck. Like not. Maybe I just need. You know what? Fuck it. All right. This is what we'll do. We will delete this. This is beautiful. This is exactly what I needed.
A beautiful train wreck, just
Yes.
like Return of the Living Dead.
Oh, it's not a train wreck.
It's not. It is a piece of art.
Return of the Living Dead 2 might be a beautiful train wreck. All right, this is starting to stress me out. Whoa. I mean, that's kind of us. Here's what we'll do.
Whoa.
Yeah. So I will ghetto rig this thing. Fuck yeah, there we go. Problem solved. All right. Shit. Well, sorry about that, everybody. Now, officially, welcome to the Return of the Living Dead live chat. As you know, I am DJ from Dead Jester Cinema. If you didn't know that, I don't know what the hell you're doing here. And the man that you see to my left, right, whatever, is a good friend of mine who I've known since high school. We worked on various short film projects together and won a couple awards on those short film projects together. And there's not a man
Awesome.
I would not trust more in writing my directing shit. And that is Mr. Todd Bauer. Todd, say hello to everybody.
Hey everyone, glad to be here.
And you already know what we're here to discuss. We're here to discuss the fine film the amazing film that is Return of the Living Dead. And I was first.
Classic.
Oh God. Uh, now just to give a little bit of our backstory on uh on this film, I had first seen it when I think I was in junior high. It was either junior high or like very early on in high school. But I'll just say junior high. And a buddy of mine and myself rented it from a video store right up the road. And yeah, when I first saw it, I had no clue what I was watching. Um, I wasn't sure if it was a comedy. I wasn't sure if it was a horror movie. Like what the hell it was trying to be. It it seemed like it was trying to be everything, and I didn't quite grasp it. And I don't think it was until we saw it together, and then a couple years after, where I was like, it finally clicked. I'm like, no, this movie's fucking fantastic.
I could only imagine what it's like to rent this movie from like a Blockbuster or something like that. Because the cover of this music, the VHS or movie,
Music.
we'll get into that later.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
But the cover of the VHS is very like iconic in its own right. Because it's the grave that says the title on it, and there's just like these like punk rocker skeleton zombies all around it.
Yeah.
And it's really like a really cool like looking cover. It'd be enough to like if I saw that in the now non-existent video rental stores, it'd be like, yeah, that's pretty rad. Let's grab that.
You see, kids, a video store is where people of our age used to go and rent movies before the advent of streaming and Netflix and all that bullshit. Um, but yeah, I remember when I saw the VHS cover of it too. Like that was one of the things that threw me off. Like it's like when you see the cover, I would have had my poster up behind me, except it's not flattening out as fast as I want it to put in a frame. So when you see it, like you said, it has all these punk rockers on it. It looks like it's gonna be just a straight up comedy. Like that's what I thought. Like a silly, almost like Naked Gun or Airplane style comedy.
Mm-hmm.
And when you watch it for the first time, you're like, yeah, there's funny parts in there, but you're like, this is kind of scary too. Like that's how I felt when I first saw it, and but yeah, it threw me off, and that's why I was like, I have no clue what the hell I'm getting into here.
Right. And even when you look at it, Return of the Living Dead sounds incredibly like Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
Which it has connections to, but not at all as well.
Oh yeah.
So it's you automatically think like, okay, you got these punk ghouls on the cover. It's connected. Like, is this the sequel to Night of the Living Dead? So you really don't know what you're getting into right away with it until you really start it, and even then, it's a little bit of a slow fizzle until it really kicks in, and the exact moment this movie actually kicks in. Anyone who's seen the movie, you kind of when those credits start to roll, you really start to get a general idea what you're in for. And then when the rain's falling and they go out into the graveyard, then you really know what you're in for.
It's like it just doesn't stop. Like they can't catch a break. Like literally, no matter what they do in that movie, there's no stopping this shit from spreading. But that is one of the interesting things about the movie is how it did start off as like a suit, not a direct sequel, but like a tangent off of the original Night of the Living Dead.
It's a rights issue or something, isn't it?
Well, the writer, I want to say was it Russo? I can't remember the first name. John
Sounds
Russo,
right. Yeah,
John Russo, or something like that.
I think you're right. I think it is John Russo.
Because I think Striner, he was one of the writers too, but he was the one who played Johnny, I think, in the original Night of the Living Dead.
Oh,
But they there was like this somehow there was a split ownership of the script or something. I can't remember what happened, but like Romero went off and did his own thing, and he was originally supposed to be attached to this, the original iteration of Return of the Living Dead.
mm-hmm.
But then he was busy doing other stuff, and so they decided to make it without him. And then it went through so many different like metamorphosis, and then
Right.
uh, Dan O'Bannon got a hold of it, who we'll talk about a little later, and really changed it to what it became that we know of it today.
Mm-hmm.
It's just crazy, like all the sort of like the backstage and the pre-production stuff of how this movie got made. Uh, which anybody who has the DVD, which I mean, oh, I do. They've released a 4K version of this that I want. This is still like the
Oh,
standard Blu-ray. But if you do find, I don't know if it's on the 4K, but if you do find this version, um, it comes with a like documentary that's I forgot how long, maybe like an hour or something like that. But
I
it's
I think the documentary is somewhere on YouTube too. I think you could.
I think you could, yeah, you could find it on YouTube if you want. But I mean, shit, I'll shill this movie. Just go buy this fucking movie
Just
if you
go
haven't.
buy it.
Um, but I highly suggest watching the documentary to anybody who hasn't, because it is almost as good, if not better, than the movie itself. Like, um, and it's just fascinating how much it changed from the original concept, how much Dan O'Bannon's influence had on it. Uh, it's
Special effects were all different
oh
and stuff.
god, that's something else I made a note of too. I want to get into was poor William Munn, the special effects artist on that, who I I don't think he knew what he was getting into. Because did you ever see his concept for, or not his concept, but his construct for the cadaver, the yellow man?
Oh yeah, it's like
Oh, it's
wrapped in
hideous.
cellophane. It
Yes.
looks awful.
I don't know how the fuck he was gonna pass that on camera, but I
I
remember.
think it's still I think it's still in there. In like they shot around or they edited around it, but I think there's still a few bits where you can see it like for like a quick second.
There might be. I know for the most part they had to go back and completely redo it because it looks
Oh
like
yeah,
complete
it's just
shit.
leaps and bounds different and better.
And then his one accidental mistake. Well, fuck it. We'll get into Bill Munn now since we're already talking about it. But his one accidental mistake was the skeleton that pops out of the ground
It's
with "Do You Want a Party?" It is so cheesy that you could see the fucking wire pull in the mouth, but it's
it's
so
the first time we
beautiful.
watched it. Getting back to the first time we watched it was um that was one of the scenes. I remember there was like a good handful of scenes first time we watched it together. And we'll get into how we watched it. We kind of started on that and then
Yeah.
veered off. But we watched it. Shoot, I'll go into it. We watched it. We used to do what we called them cheesy movie nights, and it was basically us finding schlock to watch together and kind of poke at and laugh and kind of do a Mystery Science Theater 3000 kind of thing of it.
Oh, the good old
Just
days.
talk over it and make jokes about it. And DJ had brought Return of the Living Dead one night for it, and yeah, there's like 3 or 4 different parts where something happened and we lost it to the point of tears, and I remember us rewinding it like over and over and over again, and um, uh, that the skeleton coming out and Tarman getting his head knocked off in the end. The
Getting
two
fu-
ones that I remember the most of us just rewinding it over and over again and like cry laughing about it.
Yes, when Tarman gets fucking Mark McGuired. Like, oh yeah, that's that's a vivid memory too. Is just God, yeah, we must have rewound that skeleton part about five different times. Like
Oh, it
we
was,
lost it.
and to this day that it's still it is my favorite moment of the whole movie, because it's like between it's got like a build up to it, like they're all like no one knows what the hell's going on and they run out and it just like rises and you're like oh shit, what like what's going on? And then yeah, it does that like close up on the skeleton and you see like the little like wire or dowel rod or whatever open its mouth, and it chooses that moment to do arguably one of the best needle drops in movies in general. It starts playing what is it, Do You
Party,
Want to Party,
yes, party time.
by
40,
Grave 45, and like everything just like that's the moment everything goes directly into high gear, and the movie does not slow down
no,
after that.
no.
uh, but it's like it's one of the fondest moments of like in my memory was us watching this movie and that specific scene coming on and us just losing it. uh and it is to this day one of my favorite just moments in general.
I like, and that's one of the things, and it's one of the topics that I have down here is the humor and the horror in this movie, and it balances it so well. I think it's one of the best executed horror comedies of all time, and probably I would say one of the most underrated too, because in the horror community, it's a cult classic. It's everybody knows Return of the Living Dead in the horror community, but it's not a movie mainstream wise that a lot of people think of, and I think because the Romero flicks kind of steal all the spotlight,
Right.
that not too many people think of Return of the Living Dead. And it was the first zombie movie to actually give us, I believe, talking zombies that said brains.
Hands
Like,
and brains.
yeah, the origin of zombies eating just specifically brains was this movie. And yeah, it just doesn't get its due credit. And
Yeah, and I feel like it's humor. I feel like it's along the lines of like an Evil Dead 2,
oh, for
uh,
sure. Yeah.
where it is like that real fine mixture. Evil Dead 2 is a little more slapsticky, um, but it's along those lines of just sometimes the humor and horror are so close that you can't even tell that it's going on until you really like kind of analyze it a little later, and you're like, oh, like I get it.
Yeah.
We were talking just before the stream, and we were talking about how this is very much a movie of if you watch it without getting it, um, you're kind of like, oh, this is cheesy, this is schlocky. This might as well be like a trauma film or something like that. Um, and then from there, like once you've watched it enough and you get it, you're like, I completely understand exactly what's going on here.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I think you made a expert analogy there on Evil Dead 2 that very much like they are very similar, and like you said, the horror and comedy is so close. And I think that's part of the brilliance of it is, the movie can just make you, can kind of scare you in one scene, and then immediately, like 2 seconds later, you're busting out laughing.
Mm-hmm.
And not too many films can ride that fine line or walk that tightrope of being a comedy and a horror movie at the same time. Like, there's only, I think, a handful off the top of my
There,
head.
Yeah, that really do, because you have you have dark comedies,
Yeah.
which are really just more comedy with like laughing at the macabre. But then you have that extra step of like horror comedies, and you have like this, like I said, some of the trauma stuff falls into this. Peter Jackson's Dead Alive or Brain Dead kind of falls into that
Yeah,
too.
that's another one. Like if we were to ever do a another live discussion, I would love to jump into that one. I've only seen it once, but very much like Return of the Living Dead when I resaw it in high school, I was like, this movie is fucking brilliant. How have I not seen it before? The fucking
First time I
like
saw
kung
that,
fu priest or whatever it was, like
the first time I saw that, I was on a date with a girl and she showed me that movie. Uh, and I was like, wow, what, like, of all the things to watch on a date, it
yeah.
was
But it's
right
very
there.
much it was I mean shit, it's a movie that kickstarted Peter Jackson's career and
Right. Yeah, years later that man was making hobbits.
yeah, he goes from making an Australian Evil Dead knockoff, quote unquote, and then he's going to Lord of the Rings. Like it's amazing. But yeah, Brain Dead was one of them. Night of the Demons is another one that
Night of the Demons is another good one, yeah.
I think that one probably skews a little more horror at times, but it's
Yeah, but
still
it has that
oh,
80s
it's
horror charm to it
it's
that you kind of laugh at too.
it's a and like we said, like when we were talking about the cover of the VHS and the DVDs of this. Excuse me, I had to belch all that carbonation. but um, but you know, it's a very punk rock movie. And I mean, and obviously the score has a lot to do with that, and some of
Hmm.
a lot of the characters do too. But very much in the same vein as Night of the Demons, it's a very sort of like it's just the attitude of the movie. It's just very punk.
Right. Yeah, like, and we'll kind of go into this a bit too with the music when we start getting into that. But it does it it's this movie is punk. Above anything else is it just has that it it has like that just feeling of punk, like the 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 dirtiness, the grunginess, like the almost spit in your face attitude that goes on in this movie. Like the music, the it's and while it's very like comedy, very funny, it also is an incredibly bleak movie.
Oh
Like,
God, yeah, yeah.
yeah, like the whole movie shit just gets worse and worse, and in the end everything is gone.
The entire city of Louisville is just
It's
wiped clean off the map.
just it's gone. And so it's a super bleak movie, but you're also like, you don't pick up on that right away. You're
No,
Because you're having such a good time with it, and it's having this just like rock or die attitude that you don't even pick up on it. You're along for the ride. Um, and it is until like the whole thing ends and you're like, what? Like,
yeah, the ending is like abrupt.
bam!
Like fucking like they're all huddled down in the basement and you think they're gonna get rescued. Nope, they just get annihilated.
You like, one of the last scenes is literally like a like the sonic wave of a bomb just wrecking shit.
And it's not only like um I'll get back to like the punk element here, but you're talking about the bleakness and something like I never picked up on shows you how aware I am and I like to pretend I know what I'm talking about with film. But uh like the bleakness, like when Tina and Ernie are trapped in the roof when they've barricaded themselves in the I'm not in the roof, the attic, when
Yeah, yeah.
Freddy's going like trying to come up to get them, Uh, it's very subtle, but you could see Ernie with the gun moving it slowly towards Tina, toward her head, like he's gonna put her out of her misery. Like
Right.
if the time comes, like if he breaks through and there's nowhere for them to go, and it's that sort of thing. It's like some shit like that goes unnoticed because you're just not thinking about it, and it plays right into what you said, like the bleakness of it. But uh getting back to like the punk rock attitude of this movie, and like what is the essence of punk? Like you said, it's the spitting in the face of authority. It's going against the grain of conventions. And what does this movie do? What was the established convention of zombies at the time? They were slow moving. They didn't
Right.
talk. They like, and so in this movie they're like, well, our zombies will run. Well, zombies don't talk. Well, they're gonna talk in this one, and they're gonna specifically go after brains. Oh, well, you destroy a zombie by killing its brain. No, in ours, nothing will kill these
That
zombies.
doesn't work
They're
here.
unstoppable. So it is, and I think that like the punk rock like really did like permeate all the way down through. It's not just superficial; it's all the way through the
It is.
script, and it's at the core of this movie for sure. Um, but speaking of punk, let's just talk about the soundtrack to this movie, which once again, let me right here,
Yeah.
beautiful vinyl
On
soundtrack.
vinyl.
Oh, I had to get this. I almost had I'm blocking my fat face here, but I almost had Tom Matthews sign this thing, and Linnea Quigley was supposed to be at the event too, and I was gonna have her sign the poster I ended up taking, but she had to cancel. So maybe next year. But and if anybody out there watching, welcome to the stream. Before we get further along, welcome to the stream. Please comment. We have the chat window open. You can comment and talk to us. Ask us questions if you want. So feel free to
Yeah, by all means,
interact.
be a part of the discussion too.
Yeah, we want everybody to interact here. So you don't have to listen to these two chuckle fucks here just ramble nonsensically. But the soundtrack to this movie, I think, also is what it's one of the pillars that make this movie what it is. And it is, in my opinion, arguably the best horror soundtrack of all time. And I'm just talking about not just score. I mean, not just musical music in the movie, but songs. And it might be one of my favorites just in film general. Like, oh, it's so great. I mean, you got the like bands on there like TSOL, Rocky Erickson, and even like you said, 45 Grave, SSQ, uh, the Cramps. It's such a fun soundtrack, and
when
it adds to this movie.
when you suggested this movie, of course I was all in for it. And you had sent me, oh, these are kind of topics that I'd like to touch on. And one of them was the music. And I said, I guess I've never really just sat down and listened to just the soundtrack of it. And you kind of, when you're watching it, it kind of like it integrates really well into the movie. That sometimes you don't even realize that it's going on. Um, and but I did it as I was working on projects and doing stuff at work. I had it in my ear, which is great because like half of it is just screaming punk music. So I'm just, I'm doing stuff at work and it's like just screaming in my ear. Uh, and I really wanted to uh, to highlight uh, my favorite song off the album that, other than uh, uh, "Do You Want to Party," because that's just, it's always just gonna
Oh,
make
that's the classic.
But it's a song called "Surfing Dead,"
Oh yes, hell yes.
and the song is, I don't remember where it plays in the movie off the top of my head, but it it's a song about like you can't, if you're dead, you really can't do anything except surf. Like it's like you can't go to the movies because you're dead, and you can't drive a car because you're dead. Uh, and I listened to it, and I legitimately found myself just kind of like jovially like going along with it, and it's one of the few songs on there that it's still as punk, but it also has this like rockabilly feel to it.
Yes,
It,
that
it is a surf song more than anything, but it's like, oh, if you're a zombie, grab your surfboard. That's all you can do.
it is. It. I had to double check just to be sure. I thought it was the Cramps, and it is the Cramps that sing it,
Yeah, I thought so.
and they are very much like rockabilly punk, like surfer punk, like all kind of that like combined, like that's their general sound. And I believe in the movie it's playing I think it's when the zombies are first trying to break into the mortuary
I think
when
you're
they're
right.
boarding it up.
I think you're right. I think that is when it plays.
Um
But it's such like a like upbeat, happy song, which would be even better in the film because it's when they're like all panicking and they're just trying to break in.
and
Uh,
and
and
that
it's
just
playing like this like surf song.
and I think that like again kind of doubling back to the humor and the horror aspect. If you put legit like horror movie music with these scenes, they would probably be scary. Um, because these scenes aren't really played for laughs. It's not like they're having a good time boarding up
Mhm.
windows and funny. But this horror of zombies trying to break in with the juxtaposition of this music, this like jovial like I don't want to say jovial, but you know this like bopping punk song, and
That's
it
the
just makes
exact
it
word I would
fun.
use is juxtaposition. It's
Yes.
perfect for this.
Oh yeah. There's so much of just like you said, like here's horror, or where am I on camera? Here's horror, here's comedy, and they're just right here, and they just play so well off of each other, and it's something that I know when we were doing our own sort of short films that I was always conscious of if we were going that route with comedy and horror is trying to balance it and be like, well, here's something serious. How could we make it stupid at the same
Yeah,
time? Like, how
exactly.
could we have fun with it? Um, but speaking of my favorite song off of the album, it's one. It's obviously in the movie, but it doesn't play over a significant scene. It's actually called "Love Under Will" by the Jet Black Berries, and you hear it in the movie. Uh, it's when Trash. Uh, it's during the scene with Suicide where he's like, "What do you think? This is a fucking costume? It's a way of
So what?
life. Fucking costume." I mean, it kind of is. I don't wear this all the time, but but no, seriously, like it was it's in that scene, and if you get a chance when you pop it on the soundtrack or to anybody who's watching, just pop that song on. It's one of my favorites, and it's one of the more underrated ones on that soundtrack. I think Party Time and the SSQ song,
Mhm.
We'll Make Love Until We Die. I think those ones get all the glory, but Love Under Will is definitely a really good one. I'm gonna take a swig of water here. I'm thirsty. uh, but let's let's talk about Dan O'Bannon for a second.
Oh boy, Dan O'Bannon.
uh, the architect of this movie, who didn't do a lot in his film career from what I've seen. Definitely not directing wise. I think he only directed a couple movies. Um,
He directed two. He did this and
the
The
Resurrec
Resurrected.
yes,
Uh,
Resurrection or Resurrected. It was yeah.
yeah, yeah. He primarily, if you look at his credits, he is a writer. This is the first or first. This is the only movie where he triple threats, where he directed, wrote, and he has some bit parts in it. Um,
Does he?
I
What
yeah,
what
he
was
does like
his?
a voiceover for a helicopter.
Oh shit. Okay.
pilot, and I think he's the homeless guy who gets attacked. Um,
Hobo Jesus?
he might be Hobo Jesus.
Which
Uh,
we don't know the character's name. We just call him we just call him Hobo Jesus. The one who gets attacked by trash, right? After
yeah,
she
yeah,
turns.
yeah.
I can't
If
remember.
if he's
No,
not
no,
that one,
I don't
he's
think
like
that's
around
him.
in that area. He's somewhere in that scene, I think. Um, he plays a hobo in it, but it's the only movie where he is all three of them. The triple threat is Return of the Living Dead. But yeah, he only directed 2 films, and then most of his other ones are writing credits,
Yeah.
either writing or story credits.
Yeah, he's most known for being a writer and a screenwriter. Like you said, he wrote this one, also directed it. Um, if those of you that aren't familiar with Dan O'Bannon, he also had a big hand in the movie Alien, which he wrote and Ridley Scott directed. Uh, and I believe he also did the screenplay for Alien. Um, I
Think
could
so.
I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he wrote it and then also did the screenplay. Um, which is why going on a little tangent with Alien here, since we're talking about Dan O'Bannon, why I feel like aside from maybe the sequel Aliens with James Cameron, that none of the other movies worked, especially when Ridley Scott came back to do Prometheus and Alien Covenant. There's something about Dan O'Bannon's writing and his style that I think severely lacked in those later movies. I mean, obviously by that point he had already passed away, so uh, there was no way he could come back to work on it. But I mean, his loss was evident, and he has a really good sense of horror, and
Mm-hmm.
also like how we were talking about before, how to infuse comedy within that horror. And he knows the right buttons to push at the exact moment. And it's something you could even see in the Return of the Living Dead sequel, which he had no part of. I think the only 2 returning members were Tom Matthews and James Karen, um, kind of playing similar-ish type
Right.
of
I barely
roles.
remember the second one.
I've seen it a couple times and it pales in comparison. Even when I was talking with Tom Matthews about it, and going on a little tangent about Return of the Living Dead 2, I asked him flat out like which one did he have more fun making, and he said the first one hands down. He said the second one, the director was miserable.
Mm.
He said the experience was not good on the set of the second one. He said it felt like the director had lost a bet and was forced to do the movie. Like he was forced to be there and didn't want to be there. And I was like, man, that really sucks. And he's like, yeah. He's like, but that first one was there was something special about the first one. And
Lightning in a bottle.
oh, for sure, which, you can't recapture. And we'll get to that in a second. But, uh,
um,
but yeah, like it's just, I think it's a credit to Dan O'Bannon as a director and a writer that, just the way, again, you look at the way the production of this movie, uh, and all the shit that was going on, and you hear the stories about all the pre-production issues and production issues, and it's a miracle the movie got made, but it's a testament to him, and I think he's really underrated too, for sure.
yeah, I want to get into specific 2 other examples of his work that I feel connect well with Return of the Living Dead. And the first one I want to bring up is he did writing with Total Recall.
Oh shit, yeah, okay, yeah, I completely slept on that. You're right.
Yeah,
Top
and
marks.
and when you look at Total Recall, what is Total Recall is a beautiful marrying of comedy and sci-fi.
Yeah, and
So he's
action.
essentially
Yeah,
doing what he's doing with Return of the Living Dead, only with a different genre instead of horror.
yeah.
And obviously, Total
Oh,
Recall
Total
completely
Recall's
works
amazing.
too.
Amazing.
And I thought when I saw that when I was doing the research for all this, and I had seen that, it really came to my mind of like he was essentially taking elements that he learned with Return of the Living Dead and using that same kind of tactic, only using sci-fi and using those tropes and integrating them with the same kind of comedy. A lot of the comedy um, in Total Recall comes from absurdities and stuff like that. It's just a similar kind of vibe when you really look at the two movies.
Yeah. Oh, for
That
sure.
you could tell again, like you said, just that Dan O'Bannon magic. You could really pick up on those two, um, just like distant cousins of each other. Uh,
Yeah,
uh,
like one's horror, obviously. The other one's like action, sci-fi, maybe a twinge of horror elements in there. But yeah, it's they're both cut from the same cloth of it's all about the juxtaposition. And you have the action that married so well with his sort of brand of humor. Like you said, it's I don't want to say oddity humor, but it's like a dark humor in a way, like you were talking about before, like a dark comedy, where Return of the Living Dead is not a straight up dark comedy, but because of how that humor is used, it's dark. It's funny, but it's dark. And
right.
I mean, look at scene. I'm gonna sound politically incorrect here, but the
Oh
mid
no, we're gonna get canceled.
the midget zombie, and I know it's not a PC term to use, but I mean, but when Ernie sees the zombie eating the brains, well, I remember when we first saw it, we said it kind of looked like and sounded like David Spade, but it's a horrifying scene. This creature, this zombie, just eating brains, and then when you see him chasing after Ernie back, it's like this midget. I don't know if it was a. You know what? To this day, I don't know if it was an actual midget or if
Yeah.
it was if it was somebody that would had if it was an amputee. I can't remember what they said.
Yeah, I don't know.
And part of me is thinking maybe it was an amputee. I got to go back and rewatch the documentary, but that's again, it's so absurd looking that it's just
Yeah, it's, I think
dark.
he like topples over. It's
Yeah,
ridiculous.
he's like all wobbly and shit, like going. It's hilarious. Like in a dark moment, it's something like that just makes you crack up. And I remember busting up laughing when I first saw that. I was like, "The fuck is that?" Like?" And like that's part of the mastery of Dan O'Bannon that I don't think gets a lot of credit. And another movie of his that he didn't direct but he wrote, Invaders from Mars, which I think we watched on one of our cheesy movie nights. It has this same sort of feel to it. I mean, you could tell it was a Dan O'Bannon movie, like when you watch it, because it's all about the horror, and then there's these weird, odd moments that are just. It's probably not as funny as Return of the Living Dead, but it has these odd moments that do make you laugh. Like, what the fuck is going on? Like, uh,
um, the other movie I wanted to bring up was have you ever heard of Heavy Metal? I mean, obviously you've heard of Heavy Metal, but the movie, not the.
take a ride on heavy metal. Oh hell yeah! I haven't actually. Now, full disclosure, I haven't actually seen it. A lot of my knowledge of it comes from the South Park episode with Kenny constantly going into that world. But yes, I am familiar with heavy metal.
So for those who don't know, Heavy Metal is a movie that folks. It's an animated film, and it's based off of an old magazine slash comics that was just these like really crazy, like kind of sci-fi horror esque um, stories. Again, very punk rocky, but like punk rock meets like Metropolis kind of thing. Um, and so they made a film out of it. and it's filled with a bunch of vignettes. It's almost like Twilight Zone the movie in a way, where it's just kind of a bunch of different segments. And Dan O'Bannon wrote 2 segments for it. And the first one, really, as far as a writer goes, is fairly uh, unremarkable. Um, it's called Soft Landing, and it's basically it plays during the credits, the opening credits, and it's like a Corvette floating in space coming down. It reminds me of like the old MTV bumpers.
Oh
It,
yeah.
it's very much in the same vein of that, and there's not visually it's amazing, but because I think it's all rotoscoped and whatnot, but it's writing wise you're kind of like, okay, yeah, a car comes down from space, it's cool. But the other one he wrote was, what's it called, B-17, and
Is
what
that the one
happens
with
in,
the zombies?
yes,
Okay, I do remember kind of
so
vaguely that scene.
it's you could tell because it is again just very Return of the Living Dead. Is there's a World War II plane, and they get into a battle, and the plane just gets shredded. The plane that they're all in, they're in like a big, real huge like fighter plane, and pretty much the entire crew except for 2 guys gets just slaughtered. Um, and so they just barely managed to get away from the fight, and like this green orb just kind of comes out of nowhere. Um, and so one of the co-pilot or whatever goes in the back and starts investigating stuff. And what that green orb does is it like mutates the dead crew members, and they all
Ooh.
start coming back to life.
Oh, nice.
And like they're all skeletal and whatnot. It's so much like Return of the Living Dead, and they just like murderize this co-pilot, and and so like the pilot eventually is like, hey, what's going on back there? And then all of a sudden they start breaking into like the cockpit, and he barely manages to get away from them, and he parachutes out of the plane. You're like, oh cool, like he got away somehow. And he lands on this island, and then he finds out the island is like this plane graveyard, and it's filled with these undead pilots that the same thing happened to, and they all come after him, and it ends from there.
Oh,
And
nice.
I watched it, and I'm like, like it's in this legitimately the exact same vein of Return of the Living Dead, where it's like it keeps getting worse and worse, and then it's just the bleakest of endings. But it's just a similar kind of thing. This unknown element is introduced, and then the dead come back, and they are unstoppable, and then bleak ending. So when I really was watching it, I was like, yeah, okay, this is Dan O'Bannon.
How I was gonna say, and just a quick observation, a precursor to Call of Duty Zombies. But so jumping off of Dan O'Bannon, and we don't have too many more topics here, and we've already been going for over an hour, which is fucking crazy. It doesn't feel like it.
It doesn't feel like it.
No, not at all.
We talk about this movie all night and day.
Oh God, yeah. I want to touch upon the characters really quick because we haven't really we've talked about, you know, kind of the story and the direction and stuff like that. I want to talk about the characters and the cast. And this movie boasts, I think, one of my favorite ensemble of characters and cast. Like
They
there's
really
not
do work great together.
Oh yeah, and there's not a lot of big names in there. I would say the biggest names in terms of, you know, just name recognition, uh I would say later on would have been Miguel Nunez, who has went on to do a lot of shit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was in this. He was in Friday the 13th Part 5.
Say, wasn't he in a Friday the 13th?
Yes, those damn enchiladas. And he went on to be a Juana Man. I mean, I don't know if he necessarily feels good about Joanna Man, but I mean, he went on to have a really long and kind of a really uh, good career notoriety wise beyond this movie. And then you had like James Karen, who
Yeah, right off of Poltergeist, right?
yeah, he was the one that built the houses. He didn't move the graves. He just moved the headstones.
He he didn't move the bodies.
And which also featured skeletons coming up from the
It
ground
did.
if you kind of think about it. Yeah. uh but I mean Tom Matthews has gone on he's done obviously he was in this which was I think it was big at the time. I wasn't born. So, well no, I was born, but obviously I don't remember it. Um but he was also in Friday the 13th Part 6, which is my personal favorite in that franchise. And then beyond that, I mean, he did Return of the Living Dead 2. He did a couple other things, but probably like the biggest name that was attached to this movie at the time was Clu Gulager.
Yeah,
And
that's who they were banking on.
oh yeah, and before we did this stream, I went back. I watched the movie again right before we did the stream, so it would be kind of fresh in my mind. And you don't. I never realized before until that watching it then. And it had been the first time I had watched it in probably like 2 years. Is how much he carries that movie, and
Oh,
he is
he is a
phenomenal.
dedicated actor for this film.
Yes, he is, and I don't even know if he particularly liked the experience of filming it, if I remember correctly
He
from the
was like, they
DVD.
pay me to act, and that's what I'm gonna do.
I think he got into several fights with Dan O'Bannon on the set.
I
But
would believe they were fist fights.
I think there were actually. I think they did actually come to blows or very close to it. And but he was the consummate professional, and you could tell like he does give it all in every scene he's in.
Yeah, he
And
does. He does not phone it in at all in this
no.
film.
And he's one of my favorite parts of the movie. Like you have all this fucking chaos going around and you have this character Bert who basically just takes charge, basically calling everybody like spineless bitches more or less. Like you got to get out there, just take it to him. Like
Just smack him in the head with a pickaxe.
and yeah, he's so brilliant in this movie. And I think the other one that kind of steals the show in a way too is what the hell is his name? The actor's name. I want to say Don Don Kafka, the one who plays Ernie, the mortician. Like he is phenomenal too. And I know he was kind of a character actor that's bounced around through different movies, but he does such a good job in this. He's very like I can't just limit it to those two guys. Everybody in this movie does a
Everyone
phenomenal
really
job.
plays their part in this movie. Everyone
Yes.
is pretty dedicated.
There's no weak link at all.
Even like the more minor characters are still like they have enough like character to like you remember every character in this.
Exactly.
Like there's none that like really fade into the background. Just you were mentioning earlier. I want to bring this up just as we're talking about characters. Um, you had texted me earlier when you were watching the movie, and uh, you said I never noticed that Freddy has just "fuck you" on his jacket.
Never noticed it until I just watched it today.
and I got to thinking about it because like when you look at it, you're like, there's certain characters. You're like, there's this group of like a-hole punks, and then like sweetheart Tina and like goofball Freddy
Yeah.
hang out with these guys on a regular. Like they're like, hey, let's go to Freddy's new job and mess with him. And you're like, why are these people friends with these a-holes? And but like if you look at that, it's like Freddy Freddy has like that like subtle defiance. Uh like he kind of goes along with the stuff that Frank says, but like when stuff starts to go wrong, he's like, "Hey, you asshole! What did you do to me?"
Yeah.
Uh, so like you kind of get it. Tina's a little more. I think Tina's just there because she's Freddy's girlfriend.
Oh yeah. I don't think she hangs out with that crew
Because
at all. Not her
yeah,
scene.
but it's something I didn't notice until just recently. Of like Freddy kind of sticks out and is like, but he kind of does still fit in with that.
Yeah. I think he's like the perfect combination of like that punk world, and then he could kind of blend into like a like normal society.
Right, he's still kind of that everyman kind of character too.
Yeah. And like you were talking about, like his sort of like, you could still see that punkness about him, especially when Frank is showing him around in the beginning, when when he's showing him around like the cadaver dogs and stuff like that. You could hear Freddy kind of joking around, not taking it seriously, and Frank has to like remind him, hey, quit goofing around, you're being trained. Like,
Right.
so yeah, he definitely has that attitude, and like you said, you could definitely see him hanging out with that group of people more
Mm.
than Tina does.
Yeah,
Um,
and Freddy is, when you look at him, he's a very likable character.
oh yeah, I would say
So
they're all very likable.
you like when stuff starts to really go wrong, when Freddy gets infected and whatnot, you feel bad for him
Oh
because he
yeah,
is just like, he's confused and he's like crying at some point, and you're like, I legitimately feel bad for this guy.
and that's just a testament to, I think, Tom Matthews as an actor too. That like, uh, doesn't get enough credit for being able to pull that off. I mean, it's not easy spending an entire movie screaming and crying. Like the
Just
majority of the movie
yowling.
is him in pain, and that's one of the things like I picked up on again when I just did this recent rewatch, is how much like he is like the physical acting he has to do in that role. And a lot of people will just look at it and be like, oh, he's just he's just like crying and whatever for the entire movie. But there's a lot of physicalness to his character too, especially towards the end when he eventually turns,
Hmm.
that like it's amazing. And yeah, I think more people need to give him his due credit. uh Certainly not in the horror community. I think everybody gives Tom Matthews
I
his
think
due
he's
credit.
generally well loved.
Yeah, but just in general, and like I said, I think the entire cast, even though there's some asshole characters in there, like Trash, she's kind of an asshole. Suicide is an asshole. Who's the other one? The Mohawk, Chester Bennington looking motherfucker. Uh, uh,
Scud, I think his name is Scud or
Scud. Yeah,
something.
I mean he's. I heard he's kind of a thing. Like real life, he has some issues, uh, but those characters are all kind of assholes. But there's like an endearing quality about them. Like even Suicide, who he's like all fucking chained up, has like head shaved, leather jacket. He looks like he's like this big tough like macho dickhead. But there's like a I I just had the term in my head, and it just left me. But there's still like a likability, there's still a charm about all these characters that, yeah, even though
Yeah,
they kind of act like assholes and dicks, you still like them because they're
right.
not.
Like, well, even like Suicide, and we'll get into another character real soon that I do want to touch base on, because we've mentioned him, but we haven't really talked about him to an extent. But um, Suicide, for all it's worth, he goes out. He gets killed pretty quick, but he goes out like saying like he steps up. He's like, I'm gonna
Yeah.
take care of this, and then ultimately gets him killed. But you're still like, yeah, get him, Suicide, and then he gets aced. But
And really quick before you dive into the character you want to talk about, and I think that's another brilliant part of the writing, is that it's set up that Suicide is the leader of this group. He's the one who steps up, takes charge. He's the burly, uh, big burly guy. And you think he's gonna be the savior and make it to the end, and he's the first one to go. leaving the rest of the group vulnerable because everybody else is like, what the fuck do we do now? Like, and I think that's just another brilliance in the writing there. It's the precursor to Samuel L. Jackson getting eaten by a shark in Deep Blue Sea. It's in the same vein, but I just wanted to make that comment. So the character that you wanted to bring up.
Naturally, I want to bring up who is possibly, I have it written down in my notes, possibly my favorite zombie ever in all of zombie movies is, they call him the Tar Man. And he's the first kind of body you see. He really, he doesn't kick off the whole plot, but he kind of does.
Yes, he is the very first zombie you see.
Yeah. And it's just, speaking of the cast, whoever plays that zombie is amazing.
Yes.
Oh
yeah.
The way he moves is like, it looks like he's coming apart at the seams. Like he has no control.
Oh yeah.
Over how his arms work, and like the suit work for that costume, and the costume is amazing.
Yeah.
It's it just, I don't know if he was bad the first run with the special effects, but it's just, he's dripping and he's gross. I have him on my shirt here.
Fuck yeah.
And I think his head is right above me.
I was gonna say, is that a Tar Man right above your head there?
It is, and then I have an action figure of him right here.
Nice.
But yeah, he's gross and he's dripping, and his voice is like deep but like scratchy. It is a standout performance, even though he's not like one of the constant characters. It's just an extremely, like, a horror icon standout performance. And while I'm talking about him, I have it in my notes, and I don't know if we'll really get into the sequels too much, but the fifth movie, which by the way is called Return of the Living Dead, Rave to the Grave. It's generally a terrible movie, but the one shining scene, and if you can look it up at some point, I think it's on YouTube. Just Return of the Living Dead, Rave to the Grave, Tar Man, and he comes back in that movie. He has a cameo in that movie.
Nice.
And he's along the highway with a sign, like he's a hitchhiker. And it says on the sign, it says "Rave or Bust," and he's trying to hitch a ride, and like people keep either fly by. I think someone stops, and he looks at him, and they scream, and they drive away. And then you just see him kind of like Incredible Hulk,
just shamble away,
walk down the highway, and it's playing like this weird country song the whole time. It's ridiculous, but like, if I were to think of anything that stands out from any of the sequels, it's this scene. It's just like embedded into my brain.
Yeah, I can't remember who the actor was that played him, but
I don't remember off the top of my head.
You are right. The physical performance that he gives is incredible. Like, he is literally like you said, the way his motions, like you said, he's just you do expect him to just kind of fall apart because the way he's just shambling, he's moving in a way that's just like, it's not stiff or rigid. It's just like it's
just kind of unnatural.
Yeah, it's almost a hypnotic sort of like movement, because just the way he like kind of rotates around. And for as much shit as I gave Bill Munn, for the skeleton and for his botched attempt at the Yellow Man cadaver, his work with Tarman it's impeccable. Yeah, that is his masterpiece of this movie is Tarman. And like you said, you touched upon it, where he's like a horror icon. He's barely in the movie. He's like, maybe if you look at his total screen time, it is probably
in minutes.
Yeah, it's probably less than 3 minutes of total screen time that he's in it. But it's such an enduring part of this movie and an enduring element. He's become the mascot of the movie. You look at Tarman, and then I would say Trash, Linnea Quigley, are probably the two most iconic images that come out of this movie. Every bit of merchandise you see outside of the movie poster is Trash or Tarman, and I just think that speaks volumes to both of those. Not only just the characters, but also the actors and actress that played those roles. That, you know, people say that, oh, you can just throw anybody in that suit and they can do. No. We've done enough, even on a small scale, to know that sometimes most times, I shouldn't say sometimes, most times you do have to have the right person in the right role. And you can't just throw anybody in that role and have it work the same. There's a psychology to it that even in these kind of movies, there's character psychology, and they probably a lot of times they probably don't know that they're doing it with some of these actors, but it's still there, and a lot of that is in the acting. A lot of that is in the writing, which you're very familiar with. And it's all about good characters. If you write good characters, it's there. It's there.
Right. And you need that handshake, like you said. You need that well written character, and you need that well acted character, and they just need to come together. And this movie is just filled with that.
Yeah.
It's just the right person playing the right character with the right writing script behind them. It really is, and the story for Return of the Living Dead really is nothing to write home about.
It's simple. It's a very simple plot.
Exactly. You get what you expect you're gonna get.
Yeah.
I won't rant and rave of that. Oh, this is an amazing story, but because it's not. It's a fairly bare bones story, but for what it is, it works. And like I said, the heavy lifting in this is all in character study, which is I want to just throwing back. I know I mentioned it way back. Is Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah,
Night of the Living Dead is one of my favorite films ever because it is a character study.
It's my favorite zombie film of all time too.
Right. It's probably my favorite horror film. But it's all character stuff. There's barely anything is happening in it. It's all character dynamic. And when you look at this movie and compared to this is I have in my notes, I mentioned to you earlier, that this, you have everything from Night of the Living Dead, and this is almost the exact opposite of that.
Yeah.
Where instead of Night of the Living Dead, it's showing that humanity can't get along. In this movie, everyone sticks together.
Yeah, for the
they all band, as different as they are, they all band together. But it's a similar kind of thing where it's almost you're focusing so much on the characters that you really do fall in love with the whole cast, with all the characters. And I do think that is the crux of this movie is you're rooting for these characters, which makes it even better when it's all bleak.
Yeah, when they all get snuffed out. And like you said, it's very much it's the anti Night of the Living Dead. It's if Night of the Living Dead, like I said before, is the authority figure, this movie is the anti to that. It's the punk rock to the conformity of Night of the Living Dead.
I have in my notes, because I do love Night of the Living Dead so much, and this is so opposite of it. I have the line just written in my notes of why, how do I even like this movie? But it is because it's still at the core different, but exactly the same.
Yeah, and like you said, and I think that hits upon any kind of horror movie, and I think that's why a lot of horror movies today, a lot of remakes, which we'll get to, it suck today in comparison to ones from yesteryear, especially good ones that were made from yesteryear, is it's all about the characters. Nowadays, everybody just wants the gore. Everybody wants like they want the trick, quote unquote, like the they want the show. They want the special effects and any movie, but specifically horror movie, it only works as well as the characters. And I mean that just goes to show you the writing and the performances in this movie were so damn good that you care for every single one of the characters. I can go through like my favorite franchise is Halloween. I could probably go through every single movie and find one character that I'm like, you know what, fuck that character, they deserve to die. Uh and especially like Friday the 13th, especially the later ones, you're like, man, fuck all these people. All of
I
them
don't care
deserve to die.
about these
Yeah.
people.
All these
You're
people
rooting
deserve to fucking die.
for Jason at that point.
Yeah, he's more the main character than the people. They've just become faceless people for him to dispatch. But in Return of the Living Dead, much like Night of the Living Dead and much like Dawn of the Dead, uh, not so much Day. there's some good
Like
characters.
two likable characters in Day.
There's some good characters in there, but there's good characters that you want to see just get offed. But Captain Rhodes. But uh but when it comes to Return of the Living Dead, every single character, they feel like real people. Even though they're caricatures in a way, they still are grounded in a reality and they still have a likability to when the shit hits the fan, you're rooting for them and you really don't want to see any of them get offed. I would say Tina is probably the one that has like out of all of them the least likability, and that's because she's kind of just the screamy, the girlfriend.
Kind of that scream queen kind of
But
thing.
but she never borders on. She doesn't get close to being annoying to me.
Yeah, you don't hate her in any way.
No, not at all. But she would be the one that out of if I had to pick out of all of them, that would be like, yeah, she's probably the least. But again, she's so well performed and so well acted that
Yeah,
you are rooting for her.
yeah.
She
'Cause there's
doesn't.
even like there's the others, I guess I would call them, is like the nerdy guy in the suit and like
Oh
the
yeah,
girl with the blue hair, and even then at the end they're like you're still like they're like huddled together and they're just like, oh, I'm sorry I was mean to you, and like you still you feel for these characters.
yeah. They have good moments, and I agree with you. They're kind of like the also ran of the group because everybody else kind of stands out. They out of the entire group, I would say that, like I said, they're the also rans. They're not as instantly recognizable or instantly out there as like Trash or Freddy or Suicide.
They're to quote Gilligan's Island and the rest.
Yes, pretty much. But they even give them nice character moments like that they just don't feel like they're fodder, that they're body count fodder. And yeah, it's one of the strengths of this movie. Probably its core strength. To go along with the writing is the characters and the performances. I think they're masterful, and I think it's one of the things that has made this movie hold up for as long as it has. Which segue right into our remaining topic, if before we close this out, because we've been going for an hour and 25 minutes.
All right, good rolling.
So just recently, while I was putting this stream together, I found out that they are in the works to do a Return of the Living Dead remake.
Because of course they are.
And a Return of the Living Dead universe, where they're gonna do multiple movies. Not like they haven't done it before,
Right,
but,
not like there hasn't been 5 already.
yeah. But let's be honest. The only one that really truly matters is the original. Part 3 is kind
Part
of
3 has
cool.
its fans. Part 3
Yeah.
has a cult following.
I like 3 better than 2, but it's still, it's like here's the original, here's 3, and here's everything else. Like it just goes off the screen. And yeah, I could already tell you that I'm not gonna like it. I'm not gonna like the remake. It's I'm at the age now. Like if I maybe about 20 years ago, I would have been like, oh, I'll give it a shot. It could be good. Kind of like what I did with Rob Zombie's Halloween movies, which not going to go on a tangent with that. I do like his first movie. It's not as good as the original, but his sequel to his remake was fucking awful.
Terrible. Yeah, I have in my notes here, I have when you mentioned on their remake in the works, what I wrote here is, I had no idea this is even happening. I can't imagine it will be good.
No.
And I actually had to like look up info about this, where it was like, oh, I guess they are making it, but it's not. It's like it's a remake, but they're like it's gonna expand on the universe. So it's like it's a remake, but not a remake because it's still expanding on the world.
So
I don't know.
you probably dove into it more than I did, because as soon as I heard remake, I went.
Dove in, you mean I did like a Google search?
See, you dipped your toe. I saw the pool and said, "Fuck that." I'm not even jumping in. So the little bit you did, is it like a requel? So is it?
I guess it might be.
So they're not gonna necessarily remake the original, but they may kind of do the same thing, but just set it later, kind of like Halloween 2018, which was a requel in a way, because it told the same story. Michael's locked up, then he breaks out.
Right. Yeah, it says our reboot of Return of the Living Dead will expand the existing world created by the original 5 films while staying true to the R-rated sci-fi horror dark comedy roots adored by fans of the cult classic around the world for the last 35 years.
Oh God, they're going to include the
specific
4 sequels.
Quote I have. So take away from that what you.
Oh, what I'm taking away is that they're just not going to disacknowledge the 4 sequels. That's puke.
At least reference that amazing scene from Rave to the Grave.
If the new one starts off with that, then maybe I could be on board.
Don't even remake that scene. Just play that at the beginning of the film, and you've got me.
But yeah, I'm not. No, I'm tapping out on this one, unless if it is a requel and they're not gonna touch the original, I may be a little more open-minded to eventually seeing it. But if they're just gonna flat out remake the original, and their whole thing is, yeah, we're still gonna use the existing universe, but we're just gonna remake that movie, then no, I have no fucking interest at all, like none whatsoever. It's just not, like we said, the thing with modern horror and modern cinema, as opposed to when they made these movies, is I believe there's too much, not to get on a little soapbox here, there's too much corporate involvement. Like, there's too much corporate meddling and shit like this. When these movies were made, they were made by people that actually gave a shit about story, about characters, and wanting to tell a story. It seems like nowadays some corporate studio gets their hands on an IP and is like, how can we quickly flip this to make a buck? Mm-hmm. I could be wrong. Blumhouse did okay with the recent Halloween movies. They were fine. You have to have the right people involved. If they're just going to get no-name director to hire no-name actors,
right, something to turn out for a quick buck. Yeah,
then you know exactly what you're getting into. And if that's what they're going to do, if that's how they're going to approach this, and yeah, I have no interest. I already have zero interest, so I will have even less. My interest will go into the negatives. If I see that it's just, here's music video director, and here's female who has been in one thing in the background, and male who did commercials. I'm like, oh no, just I get everybody needs their start somewhere, but they don't need their start doing that. But I think that'll wrap things up. The chat, I'm just not going to sugarcoat it. Chat's been dead. I don't know if we ran everybody
Dead
off.
or undead.
I don't know. I don't know if this handsome face ran everybody off, but it would, regardless. For those who are still watching, who are too shy to jump in and ask a question, just want to say thank you for watching. For those of you who will be coming around after the fact, this video will be up for you to watch, obviously. So you can come back, you can watch it however many times as you want. It'll be up. So if you didn't participate in chat, join us for the next one. And we got to figure out what to do next, because this was fun. I do. I think we should. We have touched upon Return of the Living Dead 2, and I think it would be fun to visit that one and just see how different and from this one again.
I'd be down for that.
So we'll have to plan that one maybe next month. And I know this is something that I want to do more with just new releases in general. Like I love talking movies, and sometimes it's hard when you're stuck doing certain ones. So it's always fun to dive in and
right.
And
There's
just
a few
chat.
movies in general I wanted to run by you and said, I think it'd be fun for us to talk about this one or that one. And
for sure. Like I already did a review of Night of the Living, or not Night of the Living Dead, Night of the Demons, but I would still love to do a discussion about that one too, because that's one of my favorites. I fucking love that movie. But yeah, we'll have to set something up. Return of the Living Dead 2, maybe Brain Dead, Night of the Demons. We'll figure it all out. But is there anything you want to promote? Your Twitter, your YouTube. Where can people find you at?
I'm working on a few projects now. Nothing completely set in stone. But if you want to find out what I'm doing, or just are up for my joke machine of a Twitter, at Todd Ogredose. I think it's down.
Yeah, you can. It's right down there. Yep.
Yeah, give me a follow. I'm always up for chatting and creative endeavors. But yeah, nothing on the scope right now, but that'll change in the next few months, I'm hoping.
Excellent. And for anybody on my channel, on my end, I do have one more Indiana Jones retrograde coming out, and it will be for Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Yay! Everybody's favorite. I know.
It's not as bad as you think.
It's really not. It's not. But I'll dive.
Not good, but it's not terrible. I think people give it a lot more.
Oh, for sure.
Than it deserves.
For sure. Especially after Dial of Destiny, which you know what?
But I still haven't seen.
Which I will say this, I will admit, completely off topic from Return of the Living Dead, but I feel like Harry Doyle in Major League. Who cares? Nobody's listening or watching anyway. But I did see it a second time. I saw Dial of Destiny a second time. It was a little better the second time, and I think that's only because I kind of knew what I was getting myself into, so it wasn't as shocking and jarring as when I first saw it, where I was like, what the fuck am I watching?
Mm-hmm.
But no, Helena Shaw still kind of annoys me. Not as much as originally, but she still annoys me. Her short round 2.0. No, I can't get on board with that. But so I did up my 2.5 star rating to a 3. So
that's good.
It's on, like,
middle
I
of the
could,
road.
yeah, like just a hair above middle of the road, and I can watch it and enjoy it. I still think I enjoy Crystal Skull more, so it's still the weakest in the franchise for me, because Crystal Skull, despite its problems, still feels like Indiana Jones to me. But yeah, I have Kingdom of the Crystal Skull on the way, and then it looks like right now, unless polling is different on my channel, that the next thing we'll be diving into is the Jaws franchise, which
Yeah, cool.
oh good lord, is there a drop off after the original? Jaws 2 is good. It's a good sequel, not a great sequel. It's a good sequel, but after that, oh boy, it's
Jaws 3D.
oh my goodness. And don't even get me started on Jaws 4, which
I'm excited to hear what you have to say about these.
that one might be an hour-long retrograde just to break down every stupid thing that's in that movie. But yeah, so to everybody that is still here, thank you for joining. For everybody that will be watching us later, thank you for checking out this video. I know it's a long one. I mean, shit, like literally over an hour and a half long. But I think
Thanks for listening to two white guys talk about movies.
Hey, the first 15 minutes was me trying to get the camera working because we weren't
Get
visible.
through the technical difficulties.
Yes, but it was a lot of fun. I look forward to doing this again. We'll have to plan it again sometime soon. And as always, after the fact, please everybody like, comment, and subscribe. And please go give Todd a follow on Twitter. Go give his YouTube channel a subscribe. Almost choked. And not because I'm telling people to go follow you. No, he's a super cool dude. Like I said, I've known him since I was in high school. One of my best friends. And yeah, just go give him a follow. You won't regret it. So always, I just said it, like, comment, and subscribe. And time to GTFO.